Well, hello and welcome to Hot Issues. This week we are taking a look at election 2016, specifically the attempt to move the date from December 7th to November 7th. What are the factors that led to Parliament rejecting the proposal for review of the Constitution? What are the possible implications of this move by Parliament? Welcome to Hot Issues. Hello and welcome back to Hot Issues, the program sponsored by the nation's builders, Gassam Cement. As I said, this week we are taking a look at election 2016, specifically the decision or the rejection of the proposal to move the elections from December 7th to November 7th. Why did Parliament do that? Can something be done about the proposal later? What are the full implications of this proposal? And we are particularly privileged to have with us in the studio for this conversation Honorable Osei Kyei Bonsu, who is the minority leader in Parliament. Honorable, you're welcome to the studio.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Why do you reject this proposal?
Let me begin, Kwesi, by indicating that the rejection of the proposal really relates to the date for implementing the otherwise brilliant idea of shifting the date of the general elections and ultimately that of the presidential elections forwards. You'll recall that in 1992, when we first had elections into the Fourth Republic, we held the presidential elections earlier than the parliamentary elections. The latter, which got boycotted by the minority parties. Now, it became apparent, moving forward, that in Ghana nobody wanted to associate with losers. So it became imperative that we had a common date to hold the both presidential and general elections. The Constitution provides for the holding of the presidential elections not earlier than 4 months before the expiry of the date of the president's term of office, which means that the earliest time in an election year when the presidential election could hold is 7th September. The Constitution provides that the closure date for the presidential elections is not later than 1 month before the expiry of the term of office of the president, which means that the last date is December 7th. The same Constitution provides in respect of the general elections, that is the parliamentary elections, that it shall hold not earlier than 30 days before the expiry of the date or the term of office of that parliament, which means that the earliest date to hold the general elections is 7th December. The Constitution does not provide any date of closure for the general elections. But for practical purposes, given the fact that when elections hold, we are not able to declare the results on that same day, perhaps I would suggest that the latest day that the general elections could hold would be, say, 5th, for practical purposes, 5th January, for elections to the results to be announced on 6th January. So the common date, the only common date for the two elections is 7th December, which explains why when the country agreed to hold both elections on the same day, we had to settle on December 7th. Now, given the scenario that we pushed ourselves into in 2000, and particularly in 2008, when we had to wait for a second round, a runoff, and that even the runoff couldn't settle it. The Constitution provides for a time frame during which to hold a runoff in the event that the first one is not able to resolve who becomes the president within 3 weeks. But usually we give ourselves about 2 weeks to do this. The second round couldn't declare the winner. So we had then to wait for the conclusion of the voting at time, which held, I think, on the 3rd of January, for results to be declared on the 4th. We almost pushed ourselves to a precipice. So commonsensically, as a nation, we have all agreed that we bring the date forward. I, for instance, don't even mind if it is as early as maybe October. Reason being that usually the incoming administrations have scant time. What President Mills did when he was ushered in barely 2 days, transition, what could be done? And you needed then to also constitute your ministers for Parliament to vet them. So remember that President Mills's time, given the shortness of the period, the nominations came in bits and trickles. About 4 of them, then subsequently dealing with them to work on the budget primarily, and then subsequently others followed. And the appointment committee, indeed Parliament, was kept overly busy. So it makes a lot of sense to bring the date forward, which is what the committee put together, the Committee on Constitutional Reforms, came up with after engaging the entire nation, that we needed to bring it forward. Now, the issue is, why did we have to wait until all this time? And I will suggest to you, as you do know, that ensuing from the court case, when the Supreme Court directed that there ought to be electoral reforms, and Dr. Afrejan summoned the political parties and instructed that from their own perspectives, submit memoranda in respect of their own thinking of what reforms ought to be carried out. The MPP was perhaps the first, or among the first, to submit our memorandum. And we did so in January 2014. The bold indication was that we needed the calendar to be brought forward earlier than the usual. You recall that same January 2014, the IEA summoned not only political parties, but other major stakeholders in elections, including houses of faith and civil society organizations that met at Koforia. Ensuing from that platform, again, a similar recommendation from the IEA involving the collation of all ideas that we should bring it forward. We have been consistent in this. I'll tell you that August, when Parliament engaged the Electoral Commission, perusing their budget for 2016, I raised this matter before them because President Mahama had then started going around and giving the signal that we may have to bring the date forward this time around. And we're all in agreement. So I asked them if they wanted to do that, they could start the gazetting as demanded by the Constitution, liaise with the Attorney General's Department to have it submitted, gazetted first in September, and then maybe the second publication could come in November ending, so as to enable Parliament in the budget meeting to do the consideration. That was August when I tabled this, and they said, oh, they were in communication with the Attorney General's Department, and it was almost ready, and they knew that it would be gazetted very, very soon. September, we had a second meeting with them because it had not been done. I asked, and they said, oh, it will be gazetted pretty soon. We had another encounter with them. Again, pretty soon, assurances, nothing happened. The last time we met them in the company of the Minister of Finance, I asked them, that was October, that we needed to do this because into the election year, we needed certainty and predictability in order for all of us, the major stakeholders, to be able to plan our activities. The long and short of it is that nothing got done. And then we entered the election year. January, February, March. Indeed, I will tell you that when we even came in for this second meeting and we inquired from the majority even didn't know that any such thing had been done. So we're all left in a quandary. Are we serious as a nation? It was after further probe, I think about a week or so after Parliament started this meeting, when we were told that, oh, the first gazetting had been done in March, precisely on March 9th. Given the shortness of the time, one was even anticipating that in that case, in tune with the constitutional imperative of at least 3 months lapse in between the first gazette and the second gazette will be done on the 9th of June. 9th of June, nothing happened. A week after, 15th June, I was having a conversation with one of our colleagues in the majority and asked whether he was aware that the second gazette had been done. He said, oh, I think he took it as a given and assured that, oh, it's been done. Apparently nothing had been done. So it was that day that he got in touch with the EC and the Attorney General's Department. It was realized that it had not been done. There was a clear default. And that day, they rushed to do the second gazette. And then we had this following. Now, the need to have this construct done earlier would have been to have paved way for, as I said, all of us, the major stakeholders, to prepare adequately. But now, nothing is done. It comes and the committee, because it involves a constitutional amendment, ordinarily, they ought to have maybe toured the country. Certainly, we cannot visit every part of the country, but maybe the regional capitals ought to have been visited. Unfortunately, I think they had some instructions that, oh, but you can see everybody in Accra. But Ghana is not Accra. Be that as it may, the committee met in Accra and had public hearing. Major stakeholders appeared before them. Now, according to the report from the committee, almost everyone who appeared before them agreed that the date of the election should be brought forward. But there was a but. The but was that 90% of those of them who engaged them said it cannot be applied this year given the shortness of the time. The committee. Now, after yesterday, it's being made to appear as if, oh, some people torpedoed what otherwise is a noble, idea. Yes, the nobility of the idea cannot be questioned. That we have identified a mischief cannot be questioned. That it's proposed to cure that mischief cannot be questioned. The issue is about the timing.
What is such a huge problem about the timing?
Because see, I told you about the certainty that is required. It is not for nothing that the AU has adopted a protocol indicating that in an election year in any country, no major law on elections should be crafted. Do you know of any country in which 2 months before the conduct of the elections, the country doesn't even know the number of constituencies to be contested? It happened in Ghana in 2012. Because see, if we should admit this to ourselves, this could have sparked civil strife in any other country, other than the land of Famenyame. I mean, it was a major thing that ought not to have been done at the time it was done. And when eventually it turned out that it was the Minister of Local Government who said, he wrote a letter to the Attorney General, to the Electoral Commissioner to effect this change. When the Constitution is clear on this, who should have the responsibility for the redemarcation of constituencies? The local government minister instigating that by writing a letter. I mean, it should not be allowed. However, as a given the nature of Ghanaians, we allowed it to slip. Now this one, apart from this, and I was saying yesterday, if you had allowed this, we're even going to need another constitutional instrument, which was going to be laid in Parliament after the President had assented to the bill. That is, after we had passed the second reading and come to the consideration stage. If perhaps we had done all this, and don't forget, the bill did not come under a certificate of urgency, so it was not going to be done yesterday. Perhaps maybe into next week. Then the president assents to it, assuming we had done so. Then sequel to that, a constitutional instrument which will require 21 sitting days. Parliament is programmed to adjourn on the 29th of this month. And that was going to mean that Parliament then will be quarantined to sit, to pass it, indeed encumber the whole of August, because you do know that every week we sit just 4 days. Assuming that we conscripted to sit on Mondays to have 5 days, you see, what it means is that the whole of August we're going to have to sit. And so I thought, and many of us, they think, that yes, it's an important bill, it's an important legislation, but given the shortness of the time, let's pass it, except to postpone the date of operation, given the shortness of the time, to the next succeeding election. Before the introduction of the bill in Parliament, that was the extent of conversation that was going on. And I'll tell you that we're almost ad idem on this. Until when it came to the committee, to Parliament, and is referred to the committee, the Attorney General then went before the committee and told them that Parliament didn't have the power to postpone the operation of any such bill relating to the Constitution. It explains why yesterday I strongly disagree with the Attorney General. And I said to her that the Constitution is clear in Article 106(11) that Parliament has that power. So where is she deriving that authority from? And I thought that was even a derogation of the authority of Parliament, what she said. And
but be that as it may,
yes,
all of you,
yes,
virtually everybody agrees that this was an important move and that it had the capacity to cure a problem with our transition.
Absolutely. I've already spoken to the issue. I've spoken to the fact that almost everybody who appeared before the committee agreed with that, except that 90%, it's not 50% or 51% or 52%, 90% of them felt that it was too late in the day this year to operationalize that law. So let Parliament do it, except that the operationalization, given the shortness of the time, should then follow, go into the next succeeding election, almost invariably 2020. So as I said, we're gravitating towards that until this piece of advice, in my view, ill advice from the Attorney General to the committee. So I wanted that to be clear yesterday, that if you agree to that, that we can do it and let it come into operation in the next succeeding election, so be it. And I thought, in fact, if we had done it last year, because I told you that since August, I was pushing for it. August, September, as late as October. There should be that certainty about elections. I've told you, and I related to what's happening in Kenya. Indeed, what has happened in Kenya. Kenya's original date of election is March 2017, right? Now, the country has now agreed through a piece of legislation to have the election conducted in August 2017. Now, that piece of legislation was passed and assented to by the president in September last year, 10 months ago as we speak. So everybody is clear in his mind, and that relates to certainty and predictability of events. That is how it should be. It shouldn't be at the say-so of any individual. And if we agree, as happened last year, 2 months, because if this thing had passed and we had to wait for for 1 more month, let August pass by, Parliament continuing sitting the whole of August, and elections to hold in November, we would have had just 2 months for members of Parliament to engage in this exercise. In the meantime, as an individual, the president, he started with Touching Lives campaign, transformed now to Accounting to the People tour. Everybody knows that he's campaigning. He goes to my backyard, and at the end of the day, he's making moves. Oh, okay, this man is a good member of Parliament, but if I had my own way, my party person would supplant him. The president is consciously or unconsciously campaigning against me. If you have a regional minister, he'll also be doing his best to oust you. If you have a DC, he will be doing the same thing. And the member of the parliamentary candidate of the opposing party, in this case the ruling party, would also be doing his best to oust you, right? So you have 4 people contending with you, and you tell me that stay in parliament, do the law, but let your opponents be in the fields burrowing your backyard. It's the reason why the heads of state and government have agreed that, given the fact that a lot of civil strife in Africa pivots or, ensues from misunderstandings from elections, let there be no major law in the election year. And if there should be anything, in any event, it should not be 6 months before the elections. So, see, that is the premise. That is where we're coming from.
Hello and welcome back to Hot Issues, which is sponsored by the nation's builders, Gassam Cement. And we are talking about elections 2016 with Honorable Osei Kyei Bonsu. Now, sir, some feel that there's a display of unhelpful partisanship in Parliament, especially with regards to this bill. What do you say?
I think people have the right to think that way. And I'll explain. I've told you what we're gravitating towards until the Attorney General entered the fray. And if you ask my candid opinion, she misled the committee by the position that she took, that Parliament does not have the power to do what we're all intending to do. I think that statement derogates from the authority of Parliament, especially when what she said is manifestly unconstitutional. There's no constitutional basis for what she said. And I've also indicated to you what was the outcome when the committee engaged the major stakeholders. Most of the people who appeared before them said, yes, we buy into the principle. We associate with the mischief that we want to cure with this piece of legislation. However, in the language of the committee, about 90% of those of them who appeared before them said it's too close to apply it this year. So, who should be bashed in this instance? Is it the people who listen to the voice of the people, or those of them who say, I get the drift.
That's not the issue.
No, I get the drift.
Yes, sir.
I get the drift.
Yes, sir.
I'm just raising this matter because over the airways, people were saying that, the minority, obstructed this otherwise noble move. That's why I'm relating to it. If anybody should be charged, and somebody even used very harsh language that the minority was dishonest. In this case, when the committee has met the group or the major stakeholders, 90% of who were saying that it is good, but can we postpone the operationalization to the next succeeding election? And the majority decide that no, we will not listen. We want it now. And we say, no, let's hasten slowly. Who rather is being dishonest in this? So, because I think that in these matters, I've always insisted that in this country, all the parties in this country are centrist parties, occasioned by the position adopted by the directive principles of state policy. In spite of the raucous noise, the NDC is a centrist party which belongs just a little bit to the left of the center. The MPP, calling ourselves Liberal Democrats, we belong to just a little bit to the right of the center. The CPP, if you agree with the contents of the Constitution, you still belong a little bit to the left of the center. So the development agenda of this country has been set out in the Constitution. So we can only differ in, various details of implementation. Otherwise, you will not expect maybe a conservative party to be the party to introduce health insurance, to introduce capitation grants. It's because it's dictated to by the Constitution. So that is where we are all consigned to. And I think we should not be, acrimonious in our disagreements over policies, because the policy outlook is about the same anyway.
So,
and that is why.
So why the partisanship?
That is why.
And was it displayed in this vote?
That is why I'm saying that in this particular case, until the intervention of somebody, we're all moving towards one direction. There was a day that we're crafting a certain law, interpretations law. The then Attorney General assumed the position. He said, Parliament should not assume that they are the only body charged with legislative powers and that the President has legislative powers. I disagreed with him. Got up eloquently canvassing that idea in Parliament. Many of our colleagues in the majority, because the person was coming from the government, the ruling party, associated with that person, with the Attorney General, the then Attorney General, we all thought he was totally wrong. We were saved, the country was saved that day by the arrival into the house of the Honorable Bagby, who came and associated with that. And because of that, that course was, I would say, deflated. And then, when Bagby so intervened, the majority members then made a U-turn. Because the national interest should inform whatever we do. And that is why I've gone to the extent of tracing the history of this proposal. It was not the ruling party that led it. It was the minority parties, led by the MPP, that introduced this. So why would anybody want to depart from it? And my unhappiness stems from the fact that into the next administration, whoever comes, this bill will have to be reintroduced. And that's why I thought if we had all agreed, we would have done what we thought was the proper thing to be done, and then the next administration will not have any difficulty. The only thing to be done maybe would have been for the CI to be introduced. Yesterday, I even said that if we had championed the cause of the constitutional amendment and concentrated on the very important aspects of it and had a referendum on it, and those days we were thinking of having the referendum alongside the holding of the district assembly elections. And I was saying that if we had done that and even affected that of the presidential elections, we wouldn't even have, needed any constitutional instrument now to affect the date for the presidential elections. So the principle is well understood. You see,
but my question is,
yes, we
was
needed
partisanship on display?
I want to believe. I want to believe.
And why?
That relates to...
And is it helpful?
Partisanship, as occurred yesterday, in my view, was most unhelpful. Because, as I said, we were about certain, we were moving towards a certain direction. I even had occasions to discuss the matter on many occasions with the Speaker. And I argued with him. I would say that the Speaker is one person who felt, okay, I agree with you that the time is short. But is it not possible still to do it? And I said, Mr. Speaker, if you're not careful, into 2020, we set a precedent because 2 months before an election, a major decision was taken. Add other constituencies, unknown, throw them into the fray 2 months before election. 2 months before another election, the next succeeding election, we have a major law. The next election, 2 weeks before an election, another law. Where are we pushing ourselves? To the precipice, which is unwarranted. It's needless. If we had done this last year, what would we as a nation have lost? Nothing. In any event, as we speak today, even the EC, the state of preparedness, leaves much to be desired. Leaves much to be desired. And I heard the honorable colleague, the honorable Haruna Drusu, I think early last week, say that, make a declaration that, government has released all monies to the EC. I don't know where he was coming from because he's not the Minister of Finance. And yet he made that bold declaration. we had been meeting, the Special Budget Committee has been meeting the Electoral Commission. We know the difficulties that they are in. That the monies that far released to them in this election year, their own demand of 1.2 billion, is only 420 million into the third quarter that has been released to them.
But at no point has all their demands been met.
I agree. But this time around, what ought to be released to them to effect procurement and other things have not been done. They are not saying that they need all the 1.2 billion, which is what question that you are asking, that at no point has it been done. I agree with you. And in fact, in 2008, we had to be pushing the finance ministry. At the time, the Honorable Ban Redu unfortunately had transitioned. Osei was the Minister of State responsible. We hauled him before the Special Budget Committee and dragged him and asked him to release what they wanted, Afrajan wanted, in the ensuing weeks. And that was done. And said to him that this is the timetable. As and when they mature, you release. This has happened. And into the third quarter, we have just about 420 million, which means that it's only about a third of the amount required. And indeed, they require, as of now, about 800 million. And yet, government has not released that. Because we have been engaging them, the Special Budget Committee has been engaging them in the presence of the Minister of Finance and the Deputy. And these matters have come up strongly. In fact, we met 2 times already. I will tell you that yesterday, we ought to have met them. But for what happened in Parliament, we ought to have met them the previous week. But the Minister indicated to us that they had to have some engagement with the Finance Committee at Senchi in respect of their own dealings with the IMF. He needed to take them through a lot of the processes in order to court the sympathy of the Finance Committee. So they were there at Senchi last week, which explains why we then had to program to do this yesterday. Unfortunately, we couldn't do that because of what happened in the House. So they are lamenting, and we need to clear it because it's compromising a lot of things that they have to do. And also, Kwesi, if we had done so, it was going to affect, already this year you do know that they've had to shift their calendar on 2 occasions. And if we had done this, it was also going to affect their own calendar again. Because you see, today as we speak, they are doing the exhibition process. The process is unfolding, it's ongoing. They are doing registration of those of them who use the health insurance.
Yeah.
In their own words, before the Supreme Court, the numbers running to about 4 million. What they've succeeded in doing thus far is about 56,000 or so. And they say that people should let them know who they know use health insurance to register, in order for them to be able to prompt them and tell them to come and re-register if they are Ghanaians and qualify. What it means is that certainly the 56,000 is on the downside. And if the numbers are so huge, as you do know, technically, after capturing their names, they need to do another exhibition to let them be assured that we have their names before the final document comes out and is certificated. As we speak, there's no provision for that. So what needs to be done ought to be done properly. And I think that even though the 1 month may not be able to even be helped, given where we have pushed ourselves as a nation, it doesn't have to be so always. So, you see, we want the proper thing to be done so that, you see, elections, it's about winning or losing. But if you win, given the fact that the playing field is level, you will then be able to elicit response from losers who know that it is not something that must be won at all cost. It is not a life or death matter. It is about just, indicating to the rest of Ghanaians about what we think should be the path that we should beat in order to take us to Canaan or the land of prosperity. Another person thinks that we should follow the left route. One person says that, Sankofa, let's trace our steps back. One person is saying, let's follow the right. Oh, there's a shortcut ahead. Why are you saying that you should go right or left? That is all that it entails. So it shouldn't amount to acrimony or rancor. And to quote a champion, bitterness.
Okay, I agree, but I'm going to take you back a few steps.
Right.
Now, let us assume that you are right, that the Attorney General's position before the Parliamentary Committee was untenable and so on. Why is it not possible to have some people in the minority agreeing with the Attorney General and some people in the majority disagreeing with the Attorney General? Why is that not possible?
It is possible.
So why is it not happening in Parliament?
That's the issue. That's the issue that, please, because you are friends to many of our colleagues in the majority.
And in the minority too.
Yeah, I agree.
And you are one of my friends.
You are certainly.
Yeah.
Maybe not an excellent friend.
Very excellent friend. Yeah.
But the point being made is you can behind the curtains engage them. Many of them would disagree. No, I'm saying many of them would disagree with the position of the Attorney General. I'll tell you, when the Deputy Attorney General entered the fray, when I said that we needed a CI after crossing this hurdle, and that would also not be helpful given the time span that we have. And that was the reason why I thought it would be necessary to craft the bill, but let us operationalize it in the next NCB. The Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, rose up to say that a CI was not required. Even though the Attorney General on another platform had said, oh, a CI is required. But we had a deputy rise up in the House to say that, to contradict the Attorney General, that a CI is not required. So I quoted the relevant provision in the Constitution to him and said to him that he should contradict the position that I was holding. In all fairness, when he attempted to rise, I saw at least 2 members of Parliament behind him trying to hold him down, that he shouldn't get up on that because they knew that he was wrong. But I'm not too sure that if we had to vote on that in the open, they would want to, give up on the position of the Deputy Attorney General.
Isn't the whip system part of the problem?
In any jurisdiction, you can fault the over application of the whip system. In any jurisdiction, you can fault it, except in our case. I think in recent times, it's getting a bit too much. And that should be
worrisome. So you're uncomfortable
that should be worrisome
with the undue use of the whip system?
Absolutely. You see, parliaments are as strong as their committees make them. And at committee levels, there's very little disagreement. Or there's supposed to be very little disagreement. Indeed, when there are bills, major things before Parliament, they are dealt with at the level of the committees. There are jurisdictions where, when committees deal with matters, plenary doesn't even discuss them. And I can cite to you the Parliament of Australia. Whenever a committee has dealt with an issue, it's taken as a given. Plenary doesn't discuss it, unless it relates to a major government policy. So smithing bills are done mostly at the level of the committees. Increasingly, however, and since the Fourth Republic, we have been seeing how we have been dealing and doing good business at the level of the committees. Increasingly, rather unfortunately, these days, you see open hostility at committee levels. What is occasioning that? I'm not too comfortable with that. It shouldn't happen, especially when committees are sitting in public and there is an open display of disagreement. If you disagree, let that be behind the curtains and in the full glare of television cameras and the public. You limit that one. But increasingly, we are moving towards that end. And it's not helpful. And I know of situations where, with respect to the establishment, you see when committees are doing business and committee chairs are almost on daily basis going to consult the speaker, I think it's wrong. And I tell them, there was an occasion that I told one person in the presence of the speaker that what he was doing was dangerous to, growing parliament, as if you want to take instruction from the speaker. It's not right. And I think that we should watch it as a parliament. I'm not saying as, the majority party, but as a parliament as an institution should be watching this. Otherwise, you see, we'll be politicizing every matter.
And raising tensions
unnecessarily.
Yeah. Hello, welcome back to Hot Issues. And we are looking at election 2016. We are looking at Parliament's decision not to shift the date of the elections from December 7th to November 7th. And we are talking to Honorable Osei Kyei Bonsu, the articulate minority leader. Now, sir, it's been suggested that the minority scuttled this bill because your party is not ready for power. It's not ready for the elections.
That question itself is pregnant with aspersions. The questions seem to suggest that the minority scuttled an otherwise good move. That's why I'm saying that it's pregnant with innuendos.
Sure.
And that question, loaded as it is, the question itself cannot be, further from the truth. Because I have already related to you what the committee itself told us, that the generality of our citizenry agree to the principle underpinning the bill. However, the country is not ready now. Let's operationalize it the next time around. So is it those of us who agreed with what the generality of the people said, who scuttled it, or those of them who, in spite of what the general public were saying, decided that we'll do our own thing? Who scuttled what? See, so that question itself is loaded with connotations that otherwise are unsavory. But to come back to the pith of that issue, that is the MPP ready? We are ready. We are battle ready. My presidential candidate is going around and generating a lot of interest. I'll suggest to you that there are big wigs in the party who called to tell us, given the euphoria that is being generated by the rounds of the presidential candidate, you should strike the iron when it is hottest. So please, we have heard the committee is saying this, but in spite of that, do this. Then you relate to the technical issues that may have to confront us as a nation, not as a party. Then people ask, is that so? Or talking to us about the Electoral Commission, but they themselves are saying that they are ready. Then you ask, when the Electoral Commission, did not the Electoral Commission declare that they were ready in the conduct of the assembly elections? What happened? Not only, last year, but the previous one. They said, they boldly declared that they were ready. And yet when reality check
So in ordinary man's language, there were some of the big wigs in your party who wanted you to vote for November 7th.
I will tell you, you cannot say that the party is not monolithic. Like your own party. Are you still with the CPP? I must ask. What
do you think I am?
I want to be very certain, Kofi. Sometimes I'm not too sure.
You do know where I am.
You're right. But so on any issue, you don't have 100% of all the people agreeing that this should be the cause. Otherwise, you'll be reduced to zombies. And it may be for a good cause that people will be saying that, okay, let's do this. And indeed, I was having some confusing signals. So I said to them, let's have an emergency steering committee meeting. So the party had to hold an emergency steering committee meeting to discuss, and we put everything on the table. We brainstormed, and they left us that, that being the case, we cannot force anything on you. Go have a caucus meeting, and whatever the majority decide on, so be it.
The majority of the minority decide on?
Yes, okay. So be it. So that is what we did. And we did that because, admittedly, we didn't have the full complement of the steering committee. If we had, even though the overwhelming majority indicated that, okay, given this scenario, then this should be the cause. Listen to what the people are saying. If the people are saying that they are not ready, don't swim against the tide. So that was the advice. But yet they said, but go consult. If the majority of your people say that they want to do it, so be it. So I will not say that we were quarantined to follow a particular course. We listened to the people. And so, for instance, yesterday in the morning, when...
So still, there were some big wigs in your party.
I've said there were individuals.
Wanted November 7th.
There were individuals.
Yeah.
And there are many big wigs who also disagreed. Right? I mean, because the party is not monolithic, as I've said. So yesterday when I called a caucus meeting, I said to them, the Honorable Osei Bonsu is our ranking member on Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee. We wanted him to brief us about their encounters with the major stakeholders. He briefed us. Obi Amwa is one of our representatives engaged with the other parties on the IPAC platform. We listened to him. Professor Jambafo is the de facto chairman of the Special Budget Committee. They have been dealing with the Electoral Commission. We listened to him. And then what I also do know, I told them. It was upon that we came to some determination. That was yesterday in the morning, that being the case. And if this is the report from the committee, let's listen to what the people are saying. So, Kwesi, that exactly is what happened. And now, it is not for reasons that the party is not ready. We are ready. And unlike what is coming from the establishment, when we all do know that the president is going about campaigning, he first says that, oh, I'm touching lives. Which lives is touching, only God knows. And then the second stanza is accounting to the people. Even though, of course, he didn't accounting to the people, because he first of all tell them that, okay, you gave me this money, this is what I spent on this. But no such thing is being done. But be that as it may,
accounting is not always financial, is it?
Because in your earlier life,
accounting is not always financial.
No, let me tell you something.
Yes, sir.
In your earlier life.
Earlier life?
Yes.
I've had only one life.
In your life before life. I heard you one morning, and on two occasions, on Peace FM those days. Anybody who was seen or deemed to be siding with the ruling party was described as an apologist of the regime. And the voice with which Kwesi raised this was a bit scary.
Scary?
Yes, because you said...
Kakai?
No, I've not said so. You said that for journalists, you should always be critiquing to get the best for the people. So even if government does well, which is what they are supposed to do, you don't dwell on that.
I wouldn't have put it in such impeccable English.
No. It was true language.
My English is a bit haughty.
Oh, the Queen's language is not ours.
Okay.
We all borrow from that,
okay.
And want to perfect our diction. But we're not speaking English anyway. We're speaking Chi. So I'm only translating what you said. But that's not in any way to show disrespect to you.
No, sir.
But I'm saying that government is saying, the president, but I'm saying that what he's doing, everybody knows that he's campaigning. But he doesn't want to own up. But see, you must be very certain about the date in order for you to program your activities, whether November 7th or December 7th.
Are you generally satisfied with the general state of preparation for election 2016? And given the fact that we have about 3 months to go, and no political party has launched its manifesto, for example.
In 2012, the major political parties, I don't know of any that launched their manifesto before August. And so I'm surprised this year people are saying, oh, the MPP is not launching their manifesto.
Not the MPP, all of you.
Yes.
All of you.
It first started with the accusation of the MPP. Until later it surfaced, people realized that, oh, it's not only the MPP, but NDC, even the ruling party haven't launched their manifesto. So I think that we are not in default. But I would think that the proper thing to do is for parties to launch their campaign, launch their manifesto at least 6 months before the elections. So that will be very clear. I keep saying that, and I'm happy that this time around we have a very serious effort to have a long-term national development plan fashioned for this country. I've already said that the directive principle of state policy set out the broad goal for us. And it concerns all of us to the center. Once you have a long-term national development plan, the MPP, because we are just a little bit to the right of the center, will weave our manifesto around the long-term national development plan. The NDC will do the same. And then we'll be compelled in succeeding any administration not to allow any investment to go waste, but to continue that investment, because we would have agreed about the soundness of that program and policy. So we pursue it for the benefit of this country. So I agree. We see that beyond August may not be the best. We intend to launch ours very soon, and I think we've set August 4th for it, possibly.
We look forward to that.
And I'm hoping that will not be in default.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, viewers, this has been Hot Issues, which is brought to you by courtesy of the nation's builders, Gasem Cement. We've been talking to Honorable Osei Kyei Bonsu, the minority leader in Parliament, and we've been talking election 2016, with particular reference to the decision not to shift the election date. Hope that we've all benefited from this conversation, and please do remember that the best in everything comes to you from TV3. Please keep listening to us and watching us until we meet again pretty soon. Bye-bye from all of us from TV3.
Brought to you by Gasem Cement and supported by 3FM